guys, Brian Salter here with Salter Racing Engines, and I want to talk to you about combustion chambers. I've said in my videos in the past that only a handful of people really understand combustion chambers, and that's not to slight anybody, not like that. But there are some few people out there that are just extremely good at it. And I thought I would. Some people asked me to discuss that, so I thought I would. Combustion chamber. What does that dictate? What does that mean to you? Do you even think about it at all? Do cylinder head porters even think about it at all? Let me try and fix this thing, guys. I still don't know what I'm doing. The guy who normally tries to help video these things is not with me. Alright, so anyways, I'm sorry, everything's backwards when you look into a camera. But do you think about them at all? Because you should. And I want to try and help you understand it. So, what does a combustion chamber do? Well, let's look at the name of it. Combustion chamber, right? It actually contains the combustion process. Have you ever wondered why different engines require different amount of ignition timing? For example, if you go back to I don't know, some Ford small block stuff. A lot of the timing, ignition timing on those is, 32 degrees, or I've had some that's 29 degrees. I've had some that's 34 degrees, 35. They're kind of all over the place. And a lot of your older Chevrolet stuff was 38 degrees, 40 degrees. Some of the really short stroke stuff was 42. I've seen some 44. So why such a big discrepancy? Dodges included, imports included. Why is there such a big discrepancy in what ignition timing different engines want? And I think there's something there for you. So, of course, we're not talking about fuels like, methanol and nitrous and boost and gasoline and pump gas and all the fuels. We're not talking about any of that. Pretty much, if you give all these engines the same fuel, you are going to see differences between manufacturers, or I should say between engine families. You're going to see some ignition timing differences. For example, the LS likes about 29-30 degrees, no matter what. The older Chevy likes 38 to 40. The newer stuff is around 35, 36, and so on and so forth. And then when you get into the aftermarket custom cylinder head stuff, most of my really good stuff is 34 degrees. So anyways, why is that? Have you ever thought of the military for a moment and think of the word shape charge? Anybody ever heard of that? A shape charge is designed to cut or destroy, demolish. It's where you take for example, you can take a copper plate that's shaped like a V block, like this. And in the center, you'll put a charge. And when the charge goes off, the copper plate will direct that explosion in this direction. Therefore, that explosion leaves that copper, it's a V trough. It will be in the center of that V trough. When you set that explosion off, it actually rips through whatever material it is, like a samurai sword, just right through it. Now, your combustion process is not a shape charge, and I ain't trying to say it is, but there is something to this, that if you take a particular head and put it on an engine and it wants a particular timing, and then you take that head off and get another cylinder head with a different chamber, different valve angle, all that, and put it on the head. Now all of a sudden it wants an even different timing. Okay? Combustion chambers affect ignition timing. They're not the only thing, but they do. And piston top shape affects ignition timing. Obviously, a flat top piston is probably the best, or maybe even a slight dish is probably the best, but the dome pistons require more timing than a flat top or a dish piston. So if that's true, and it is, then the same applies to your combustion chamber. If I have a very efficient engine, let's just say I'm building 18 degree or an SB2, and it wants around 33, 34 degrees of timing. It's 12 to 1 compression on gasoline, and it wants 33, 34 degrees of timing, and it's making, I don't know, high 800s on gasoline. And then all of a sudden I take those heads off, I put a really good set of 23 degree heads on, and now all of a sudden my timing requirements have gone from 33, 34 to where they were. Now they're much higher. They're 36, 38. And the only change is the head. Same cam, same carburation, all that. The difference is the chamber shape. So when we talk about combustion chambers, we have to understand that so many people miss that part of it. They're so concerned with the chamber aiding in filling the cylinder that they lose the concept of also this chamber houses the combustion process. Now, earlier I said your combustion process is not a shape charge, guys, and it's not. I want to hit that for a second. When you light that gasoline with your spark plug, it is not a nuclear bomb, okay? It doesn't look like a mushroom cloud going off. No, it's a big, very powerful pressure wave is really what it boils down to. Now, some of you may probably, this is old news to you, but apparently to some people this is breaking news. The spark plug fires on the compression stroke, guys. And I'm having people comment going, no, it don't, no, it don't. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, well, okay. But it does. On the compression stroke, depending on the design, it's going to fire between 30 and 40 degrees at total timing. Somewhere between 29 and 40, depending on your setup. That spark plug is going to fire before top dead center on the compression stroke. Now, with that being said, excuse me, guys. My allergies are bugging me. With that being said, I said in one of my ignition timing videos that the one thing that stays the same no matter what's happening is the burn rate of that fuel. And I even had some guys comment on that, but listen, just get off the high horse. The one thing that stays the same is the burn rate, okay? When you light that fuel at idle, in other words, the physical property of the gasoline has a burn rate. And when you fix your stoichiometric ratio, whether it's 12.8, 14.7, whatever it may be, that gasoline burns at a rate. And that gasoline does not care how many RPMs you're turning. It's going to burn at the same rate it did at idle. It is at 8,000 RPMs. Therefore, at idle, you don't need as much ignition timing. At 8,000 RPMs, you need much more timing than you do at idle because now your piston speed is a lot faster. But the fuel burn rate did not change. Okay? And your chamber houses all of that. So when this happens, I drew a little chart. I hope you can see it. Maybe you can't. I want you to notice this is a oh my gosh, I may have to do this later. But this is a 3-inch stroke on a flat sheet of paper. If you can see here, 0 top dead center. Okay? Look where 30 degrees before TDC is. Look where 40 degrees is. This is 90 degrees, and of course, bottom dead center, that's 180. That's half your stroke of the crank. Get 3 inches. That's its 3-inch stroke, like a typical cup engine, short stroke, street motor. But that is a legit how far away from TDC that piston fires, or that plug fires. And between those two spaces, between 30 and 40. There's TDC. So at wide open, or at max timing, total timing, that's where, right between them two marks, is where that plug fires before on its way up. That piston is going up, and spark right there. It starts that flame. And as that pressure wave reaches maximum pressure, that's when the sucker reaches TDC, rolls over, and starts its way down on the power stroke to force that crank around. And it's amplified the longer the stroke. I got one here that I drew that's 40 degrees. See if we can see this one. And you can see that the longer the stroke, that's a 4-inch stroke right there. The longer the stroke, the further away from TDC. Right there is 40 degrees before TDC. There's 30. The further away it is, because obviously, degrees is not necessarily a distance. It depends on how much the stroke is. So, there you go. Now, why am I saying that? Because your chamber has to catch all that and redirect it. Now, finally, I got to the root of the problem. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little slow. This is obviously just a little chalkboard, but I want to, since I'm by myself, if you was to take a, if you're able to see inside of there, I'm just going to whip this out real fast, because I need you to be thinking of that one thought, that your chamber redirects the combustion process. Now, what is part of your chamber? When you think about what is part of the combustion chamber, well, obviously anything above the top of the piston is part of the chamber. That means the head gasket's part of the chamber. That means the top of the piston, the shape of it, that's part of your chamber design. And obviously the actual chamber itself is part of your chamber design. So now what I'm going to do here is draw a little simple kind of wedge design. And we'll talk about this. So what you're going to see here is a kind of a cross-sectional view of a piston at TDC and a combustion chamber. All right. As you well know, there are multiple designs of head chambers. There's Hemi chambers. You have the more vertical ones like the SP2 R7s. Some of your more lower angle cylinder heads like 11, 12 degree, so on and so forth. You have a plethora of cylinder head designs. When that process starts, when that combustion process starts, that thing has to absorb every bit of that, and it has to redirect it. So when you light that flame and this begins to build pressure, as all of it begins to burn, look at the shape of your chamber and imagine in your mind, okay, what part of that piston is going to see pressure first. This is important. I know this is kind of lame the way I'm drawing it, but what I'm saying is a fact. This is important. Is my wedge chamber design driving more pressure on the outside edge in a particular area? Is it driving more pressure there? Or is it focusing the drive in the center of that piston? Obviously, we want the pressure wave to drive dead center of the piston, because when we drive on the outside edges, the piston wants to rock. And anytime it rocks, it's binding up in the bore. Think about that. If that piston rocks, especially under pressure, it's binding up in the bore. So if I can drive it down, if I can apply my pressure dead center of that piston, now the piston is going to stay level, and the rod is going to drive dead center down the bore, which is going to drive the crank. I'm not losing momentum. I'm not losing that force due to just a whoppy-jawed effect of a uneven pressure wave going off in my cylinder. And if I have a funky chamber design, that's exactly what's going to happen. So before the one thing about pressure, you all know, whenever you have pressure, it is equal everywhere. So if I have a tiny 1/8 inch tube over here that's transitioned to a 2-inch tube that transitioned to a 4-inch tube, and I've got 80 pounds on that system, it's 80 pounds down at the very tiny end of the tube, the same as it is at the 4-inch tube. All right, so that's pressure. It's equal. When you have pressure, when you're able to read the pressure, it is equal everywhere when it's constant. Now, in the combustion process, and I'm trying not to scientific this to death, I'm trying to make it very easy to understand. Now, we have this spark plug has lit the fuel, and now this pressure wave begins to expand, and it grows. Before it can pressurize and actually start pushing back down on the piston, it has to fill up every nook and cranny. And that is why this chamber design requires that much timing, and this chamber design requires this much timing. Because of the nook and crannies that are different in these chamber designs. So a lot of people don't even look at that aspect of it. It's not all about flow. So in other words, let me throw this too. I've had people really work a chamber, and visually, it looks like the thing should flow a ton of air, and then you test it and realize it ain't. It's awful. It ain't no, well, just say it ain't no better. You spent all this time on it and it's no better. Because airflow is not water, and it does what it wants. Now, obviously, it can be directed, but it's a funny thing. It's not, we're not dealing with naturally aspirated. We're not dealing with an air pressure coming out of an air tank. We're dealing with something that naturally creates a void, thus a vacuum is created, thus we are directing the atmospheric pressure that's entering the intake. We are directing that as much as possible into our cylinder on its own free will. Obviously, mixing fuel in that at the same time and then lighting it at that set time, that between 29 and 40 degrees, whichever engine you have, before top dead center, so that we can have that expansion wave move across the inside of the head chamber, filling up every nook and cranny, and then redirect down on top of that piston and drive it down. When you focus on your chamber only on cylinder head flow, you can miss the boat sometimes. And I'm going to tell you another example. I can get done with the cylinder head, we run it through the CNC, and it might flow, I don't know. This is pretty close to what I'm going to say. It's 23 degree head. I'm not going to give away my other stuff. Let's just say it flows 350. Okay, 110 valve, 240 cc runner, flows 350 CFM. Okay, because it does at 750 lift. Really good, actually. Now, with that being said, let's say that I want to run a flat top piston and I can't get the compression. Say NASCAR's got me limited to 12.1, and if I go over that, it's 10 pounds for every tenth I'm over. Tenth of a pound. If I'm over a tenth of a point, it's 10 pounds of weight they start stacking on the car. Okay, so fine. You keep it at 12 to 1 on the button. You got a flat top piston, but I can't get 12 to 1. There's no way with the chamber size of whatever it was, I can't remember, 60 something. You can't get there. So what do? Well, we stick that head in the machine and we start whittling away. Cut the deck. Get rid of it. So we cut the deck down, and now my intake valve is literally below the deck, meaning if you set the head down flat, you're literally sitting on the intake valves. I don't care. Whatever. And then I flow test it, and I've lost 20 CFM. Uh-oh. No, it's not an uh-oh. It don't matter. You say, what do you mean? The chamber helps flow numbers, but it don't matter. It don't mean it run. It does not mean it makes less power. Not even a little bit. You say, well, why is that? Okay. Now we're getting to why there's so many parameters. Because if I left the chamber alone, left the head thickness it was at, then I've got to run a dome to get the compression. So if I run a dome, now I've got to do some tricks to my dome in order to get my burn efficient. Okay, so I do. And I'm not going to, I might tell you, I don't know, not in this video. But there's some stuff you can do that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So anyway, I work my dome. I get it fairly efficient, better than straight out of the box dome. And get my compression ratio, and I'm just going to throw a number out. We're running, let's just say this one is a box stock 390, for example, and 23 degree, like I said, with everything else, 358 max, 12 to 1 max. It makes out of box stock 390, it's like 590. Okay, 590 horsepower. So really good. And that's with the chamber as it was, flowing the high flow numbers with a dome, because I had to put a dome to get the compression. Now I take that same engine and I cut the deck down so I can actually run a flat top. Now my compression is 12 to 1 because I cut the head so much. I shrunk the chamber enough. It's about 5.5 thousandths per cc, by the way, on just about every aluminum head. Just about. If you want to know that, if you need to measure your cc's, it's about 5.5 thousandths per cc of volume on almost all the typical type heads. So anyway, I cut enough off, and I now have a small enough chamber. I have 12 to 1 compression with a flat top piston, and my power all of a sudden is the same. Well, why didn't I lose power with the dome? But I should have gained, because I had the compression. So, but the dome interferes with the flame front. No. So what happened is, now that I had a dome in there, I had to go up 2 to 3 degrees on my timing. I had to start the flame earlier to get over that dome to pressurize the entire chamber before it could start driving back down on the piston. When I eliminated the dome, went to a flat top, I didn't have to start it as early. I could start it at 33 or 34 degrees before top dead center, because it had no hill to climb over and light the rest of the fuel in the chamber. You have to look at it as if you set a field on fire. Now, I have a simplistic way of looking at things, but imagine you set a big wheat field on fire. A small one, say. It's not going to go poof. It has to burn it like this, like that. It does not explode. It burns. It consumes, and it creates a pressure wave. It is not, like I said, a nuclear bomb. So I have to wait for that flame to travel over the dome to get to the other side. Therefore, I have to start my timing earlier. I have to light that plug sooner. So now my problem becomes my pistoning and not necessarily my head, my chamber. When I have a flat top, any issues is my chamber. When I have a dome, I have now double issues, my chamber and the dome. So when you design a dome, obviously you want peak flow, but that should not be the main thought. The main thought should be making sure I have complete burn process in that chamber, making sure it is assisting me in directing that flame, that pressure wave of the fuel burning across the entire top surface of that piston. That should be your thought process. Now, one way you know you got it right, and I have some not here with me. I'm at my guest house getting ready for a friend to come over, but one way you know you got it right is when the top of that piston is just covered in a nice black combustion burn, like it's just, everything looks beautiful. The entire chamber inside that is black. I say black, but you know, the combustion burn. If I've got spots where there's not anything, then I don't have the chamber just right. When you pull a head off an engine and you see black in some areas and not in some areas, that is a bad chamber design. And that should help you. How can I get, and a lot of this is, people want to talk about swirl, but it's not always swirl. Sometimes it's your chamber is just wrong. Sometimes your chamber's just wrong. Now, I had I got to learn from somebody who was very good way back in the 90s. And I learned a lot. That guy knew how to make chambers and also porting too, but a lot of times you can't help how the chamber looks because of cylinder placement and that kind of thing. But when you look at the plethora of cylinder heads that are out there and how they all got these different chamber designs, it makes you wonder who's thinking of this stuff. You want to know a good chamber, and I'm just going to give you one that just works. I know it works. It's awesome, right? Get a cup engine with SP2 chamber, RO7. Okay, that is an ideal chamber. And there are lots of them out there now where these manufacturers are copying them because they're that good. I don't want you getting mine and copying it because I'm still racing. I'm still providing engines to people, so I'm not going to show any of that. I'm just not. But I do want to help you, and I want to talk about it. Yeah, guys, think about it in that aspect. It's not only about flow, but it's also about helping direct the flame front. That flame has to travel and go in every nook and cranny before it starts reaching, maximum expansion rate, and then it starts driving that piston back down. The faster it can get back to driving downward, and the more centrally located it can be because of the piston. We want it to be dead center if possible, which it won't be, but if it could be, I want it to be right dead center of that rod. That's what you want. You say, well, that sounds like something diesels do. Exactly right. The high dollar diesels, they do have this right. They don't have a chamber like gasoline engines. The piston is the chamber. And they've made that piston like a funnel where it catches all of it. But we're not running 5-inch strokes and things like that, so we can't get the compression ratio they do. And then a lot of rule classes don't allow that kind of compression anyways. So, think about that. And I don't know, maybe this helped you, maybe it didn't. If it's a terrible video, I do apologize. I will try to do better. But I've had so many people ask me about it. I just wanted to throw that thought at you. I want to make you think. I don't want to just hand you everything on silver platter. But that's what I used to do. I used to sit and think when certain people would say things, And like, well, Salter, what do you think about that? I'm like, I don't know. So I would go study and think. And it allowed me to find my way. I don't want to tell you what's best and what's not best, although I can say some things that are good and not good. Like, I'll save you some headache if I can, but I don't want to tell you what's the best and what's not the best because it is so circumstantial. All right, guys. Well, I hope this helps. Have a good day, and I'm going to try to get some more videos. I've been so busy. Anyways, take care.